I voted for President Trump. And from day one, when the president announced that, when Donald Trump announced that he was running, and he said he's going to put a big, beautiful wall around the borders, he's going to lower taxes, he's going to get rid of some of these regulations, bring jobs back, and he's going to protect us from our enemies. I knew then, and he said it with such courage, wasn't being politically correct about it. It was from the heart. I said day one that he's going to be our next president. And I had not seen any other Republican, since being a Republican myself, who were that bold and just told the truth, and you just believe that they're going to do it. And so when they announced that the president had won on the 9th of November 2016, I went to Cloud 9, and I've been dancing on the ceiling ever since.
Me too.
I know that in the beginning you were for Ted Cruz. Why were you for Ted and not Trump in the beginning?
The reason why is I knew Cruz was a godly man from his family. I knew that he was a strict constitutionalist. I said, that dude will hold to the Constitution. At that point, I'm seeing the alternative, Hillary Clinton, and you want to talk about lies. I never heard a woman lie like that before or since.
Well, we got one person, Obama. Obama is better liar than even Hillary.
Looking at Hillary, and I'm looking at Cruz. Well, it got turned out, Cruz gets the axe, and Trump ends up the man.
Yeah.
Well, someone said, well, what about Trump? I said, Hillary, I know I can't vote for her. One, she's for ripping babies out of wombs. I don't vote for anybody if they ever are for that. By the way, Donald Trump says he was against that. You say, if Donald Trump had been for the murder of unborn children, would you have voted for him? No, sir. You say, well, what if he had been for these men having sex with men and they call it marriage, perversion? I would not vote for him. But on both those things, he said, nope, I'm for traditional marriage, biblical marriage, and I don't think you ought to kill your children. All those other things was his policies. I'm like you. I saw him. I said, well, you know what? That old dude, it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
The only two that would have got him for me was the abortion thing and the perversion. Well, he both passed that test. So I went with Trump. By the way, they said, Phil, you think he's going to make it? You think he'll win? If you look at it, Jesse, all the pundits, all the polls, all these so-called political gurus, they factored in everything on how he could not win.
Yeah.
Factored in everybody but God.
That's right.
Count on the God of heaven. So I told people when they said, you think you're going to win? I said, well, if God wants him in there, he's going in there. That's all we got to have is God deciding he wants him in there. Then he goes in. By the way, before he got in, they told me, they said, Phil, you got 15 minutes with Donald Trump. That's all you got. But he's going to be back. I'll go back and meet him. Look, I'm going through them Secret Service cats, and they put that wand, and Miss K ain't been in years. So they were checking this dude. So I get back in there. Well, I wrote the gospel down. I wrote it down in diagram form. Watch this, Jesse. So I said, I put this in my pocket. God becoming flesh, dying on the cross, being buried and raised from the dead, and his return. I wrote it down. God becomes flesh, year one. Now it's 2017. Died on the cross for the sins of the world. Buried in a tomb. The sin problem, humans. So when I met Trump, I had that in my pocket. Well, I didn't have but 15 minutes, Jesse. So I thought, got to get that quick. So I talked to him for about a minute. I reached in my pocket, and I pulled this out. And I said, Donald, whatever happens, don't miss this. And when I showed him those symbols, he looked at them and he said, what is that? And I said, I'm glad you asked. I said, Donald, your calendar says 2017 years ago. That's when Jesus showed up. He was like, I said, he died on a cross for Donald Trump's sins. I said, Donald, you have sinned, haven't you? He said, oh, yeah. I said, I've just figured that. I said, they put him in a tomb, and 3 days later, raised from the dead. I said, Donald, he'll get you out of the grave alive. I said, we're just waiting on that final hour of his return. I said, now look, I said, I'll take you down there somewhere, another one of them jacuzzis up here in this big high dollar stuff and baptize you. I said, because you're feeling. And I said, them left wingers will go nuts.
That's right.
But he said, let me have that. So he took that piece of paper and he put it in his pocket. All I can say is I'm looking at his woman reciting the Lord's Prayer. I'm 70, Jesse. I never heard no first lady give the Lord's Prayer on national TV.
Right. No, never heard it before.
Trump seems to think that he's getting more godly all the time, you know?
Being in his presence, being in that room with him, did you get the sense that he is a good and decent man?
Very much so. I got the impression that he understands. I told him he's a sinful man. He agreed. So someone says, what do you think about his heart? I said, he listened. He listened to the good news. So I just wanted to make sure that God knew. I'm thinking God's the one who arranged the meeting. So faith comes from hearing the message, Jesse. All I want to do is get the message to him, and my job is done. It'd be up to God to save him or not. So I think he has a good heart, or he wouldn't have listened to some dude like me hollering about Jesus. You see what I'm saying?
That's right. What would you like to see the president do, President Trump, the next 4 years? What would you like to see him do?
I hope he just continues on the same path that he's on. He's the only one I've seen, well, since I've been on the earth, that all of his promises that he made, he just going down the list.
Yeah.
It looks like to me he's just taking one after the other, and he ain't slowing down. It looks like to me the dude's going to do what he said he was going to do.
Yeah.
At least first month, I'm thinking, I never heard that coming out of Barack Obama, ever. I said, this dude is on the right track. I think, you know, if you look through the Old Testament, God used a lot of men that were not his people to accomplish his will, Jesse. He used a lot of different kings and stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Well, you know, David was an adulterer and a murderer. You say the Apostle Paul, who wrote most of the New Testament, Jesse, was a murderer. He was murdering Christians before Jesus saved him. So it ain't like God can't work through anybody.
That's
so
right.
I'm thinking God's working through Donald Trump as sure as we're sitting here. And I just hope through all of his policies, we can all come together as a nation, love God, love each other. I just don't see the downside of the Christianity message. Love God and love each other. Give me a break. I know that works.
I know. That's right. I think my final question about the president is, are you surprised to see how radical the liberal media, the fake news, how radical the Democrats have become, and all these left-wing organizations? Are you surprised to see how upfront and in your face they are today?
Spiritual warfare, Jesse.
Yeah.
The evil one in them. It's not them, flesh and blood. It's the one in them. You say, oh, he's not going to stop, Jesse. He wants their soul.
Yes.
And he's got. They're dead in their sin. They're controlled by him. He's taken them captive, 2 Timothy 2:24 and following. He's taken them captive to do his will.
Yes.
So God on one side and you got the evil one. I'm not surprised. Look, he wants their souls. There's nothing the devil won't do. Now, if there's no God, like all these left-wingers are saying, that means, Jesse, that there's no devil either. Well, if you ever run around on planet Earth and get in your head there's no God or devil, and you're looking at human beings and what they do, you're like, well, that's a lot of killing and raping and robbing and murdering.
It's amazing.
It looks like evil to me.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. Speaking of Barack Obama, I said from day one back in 2008, when I found out that Obama spent 20 years sitting in Jeremiah Wright Jr. church. Jeremiah Wright Jr. hate whites, he hate Jews, he hate America. And Barack said that this guy married, he and Michelle baptized their children. He gave money to him, but yet he didn't know that Jeremiah Wright Jr. was a hateful man. And so I'm saying, don't hire this guy. Obama's a liar. He's going to be worse than Jesse Jackson and all those guys put together. But America hired him anyway. And then he managed to divide the races like no one else before in the history of America. He celebrated Black Lives Matter, who is a radical, evil, agitative organization that's worse than the KKK. And, you know, it was just so amazing to see one man as president come in and just bring evil upon this country like no one else I've ever seen in my life. Did you see it that way, and what did you think about it?
I saw it exactly like you saw it. You got to remember, the best text to go to, I gave you the 1 John 5:19, Ephesians 2:1-4, Galatians 3:22. The whole world is a prisoner of sin. You're like, that's why they do what they do. 2 Timothy 2:24 to the end there. But John chapter 8, when Jesus said, you'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Those people, Jews, argued with him. Well, he makes a comment as those passages after that. He says you can spot the devil by two things. He's the father of murder, and he's the father of lies.
Yes.
And see those things, and you combine them both, you say, there's where the devil is, murder and lies. And what you just stated, that's what came out of that 8 years out of Barack Obama. It was a sad thing to watch, and a scary thing.
It really was. At one point, Phil, I have to tell you, I thought we were not going to return, to be honest. I thought that this evil that had covered America was going to take us out. But then now God has given us another chance with President Trump. I just hope the Christians, I hope the American people can recognize he's given us another chance. And so even though I love President Trump, we the people still need to keep an eye on the government, because it's we the people, not we the government, to even make sure that this administration do what it says that it will do.
You're correct. In other words, I looked at it and I said, before Donald Trump went in, my prayer was always the same, Jesse. I said, Lord, give us some time. Give us a little more time. Give us some more time. So when I saw him go in, I sat here, me and Miss Kay, and I'm watching that thing unfold. And I turned to her and I said, Miss Kay, he's giving us a little more time to see if we can get people to go back to him. Give him time to I said, give us time, Father, to repent. And I kept saying that prayer to God. Well, I looked up and I said, woo, we got baby thin. But Almighty come to the rescue one more time. We just got to now get our country in a much broader way turned back to him. And maybe we'll get off all this strife and belly aching and whining and hating each other.
Yes.